The courtroom was silent. Only one person stood at the center. Tisa. Calm, unbothered. Across from her sat the couple who once left her at a hospital gate wrapped in a towel. Her biological parents. The judge adjusted his glasses. So, you're claiming rights to your daughter's inheritance now that her grandfather has passed? Tisa's father nodded confidently. We're her real parents, Your Honor. The money belongs to us. Tisa slowly turned to face them, her voice steady but trembling with pain. You gave me away when I was 4 months old. Now you want what I earned from the only man who never left me. A sharp gasp rippled through the court. No one expected what Tisa would reveal next. A truth that would turn their lawsuit into their own downfall. Tisa's story began in silence. A baby left at the edge of a small hospital gate, wrapped in a torn towel. It was a cold morning when Baba Aching, an old farmer walking back from the market, heard the soft whimper. When he saw her tiny face, he didn't think twice. He picked her up, held her close and whispered, "You'll be safe now, my little one." From that moment, she became his whole world. The villagers wondered why a man his age would take in an abandoned child. But Baba never cared what anyone said. He built a small crib from wood, fed her milk from goats on his farm, and sang her to sleep every night. As Tisa grew, she noticed she didn't look like anyone in the village. Her skin was lighter, her hair softer, her eyes different. One day, when she was about 7, she asked, "Baba, why don't I look like you?" He smiled, sat her on his lap, and told her the truth. "You came to me from the road, Tisa. Your parents left you, but maybe they didn't know how special you would become. Blood may start your story, but love decides how it ends." Those words stayed in her heart forever. She grew up knowing she wasn't born from Baba's blood, but she felt more loved than most children ever would. Every morning, she followed him to the farm, carrying a small basket while he worked the soil. When other children teased her for being the found girl, she would just smile and say, "At least someone found me." Baba's love taught her not to let pain define her. He gave her strength, purpose, and a sense of belonging. Sometimes at night, she would hear women whispering near the well about how her real parents might one day come back. But Tisa didn't dream about that. She already had a family, one that never gave up on her. Baba taught her how to plant seeds, make herbal soap from leaves, and care for animals. He said every living thing grows better when loved. By the time she learned to walk, she was already part of something bigger than blood. A home built from kindness and a heart that refused to abandon her. What she didn't know was that the same people who left her behind would one day return. Not for her love, but for what she had earned. Growing up, Tisa often felt like a shadow among the other children. They would run around the village laughing, but when she came close, whispers would start. "That's the girl Baba picked from the road," some would say. Others would ask her, "Where are your real parents?" Every question felt like a small cut, but she never cried in front of them. When she went home, she would find comfort in Baba's voice, calm and kind. He always told her, "People will talk, my girl. Let them. You just keep growing." Tisa spent most of her days helping Baba on the farm. While other children played, she carried water, fed goats, and learned to mix herbs for soap and medicine. The work was hard, but she loved it. She loved watching plants grow under her care, turning green leaves into something useful. Baba would often sit beside her and explain how each plant had a purpose. Aloe to heal the skin, neem to clean wounds, and lavender to calm the heart. Slowly, she began to realize that maybe she too had a purpose, even if her beginning was painful. At school, she didn't have fancy clothes or money for new shoes, but she had courage. She studied harder than anyone else. Teachers noticed her focus, her quiet strength. Some students mocked her for not knowing her surname, but she always answered proudly, "My name is Tisa Aching." Baba's name was enough for her. It gave her a place to belong, even if the world thought she didn't deserve one. When she turned 16, Tisa decided to try something new. Using the herbs Baba taught her to grow, she started making small bars of soap in old tin molds. The first batch wasn't perfect, but she smiled anyway. She wrapped them in brown paper and took them to the local market. At first no one paid attention, but one old woman bought a bar, came back the next day and said, "Child, this is good. Make me more." That simple moment changed Tisa's life. Word spread quickly. People began to ask for her soap, not just because it smelled nice, but because it worked. Tisa used the money she earned to buy better tools, better wrapping, and to fix Baba's leaking roof. She named her little stall Tisa's Hands. Each bar she made carried her story. A girl who had no family name but built one with her own hands. Every time she looked at her soaps lined up on the table, she felt a quiet pride. She was no longer just the girl found by the road. She was becoming someone strong, capable, and free. The pain of not knowing where she came from no longer scared her. Instead, it became the fire that kept her moving forward. When Tisa finished high school, she received a letter that made her hands tremble. It was a scholarship offer from a business college in Nairobi. Baba Aching cried with pride that day, holding her close. "Go, my girl," he said softly. "The world is bigger than this village. Show them what love can build." Leaving home wasn't easy for her. The village was all she had ever known, and the thought of being alone in a big city scared her. But she carried Baba's words in her heart like armor. When she arrived in Nairobi, everything felt louder, faster, and brighter. The traffic, the tall buildings, the endless faces rushing past. It was a world completely different from her quiet village. Her first few nights were tough. The small hostel room she stayed in was noisy, and she missed the smell of fresh soil and the calm of Baba's farm. Sometimes she would cry quietly into her pillow whispering, "Baba, I hope I make you proud." But every morning, she woke up with determination. She wasn't just a village girl anymore. She was building her future. College life came with challenges. Her classmates wore expensive clothes and spoke fluent English. Tisa felt out of place at first, but she worked harder than anyone else. After classes, while others relaxed, she began making her herbal soaps again, this time in her hostel kitchen using small bowls and borrowed pots. She used the same recipes Baba had taught her. The first few students who bought her soaps became loyal customers. They told their friends, and soon, her tiny business began to grow inside the campus. On weekends, Tisa set up a small table at a busy market in the city. She smiled shyly as she sold her soaps, often explaining to curious buyers how they were made from natural herbs. "Everything here," she would say, "comes from the soil that raised me." People loved her passion and sincerity. One day, a woman who owned a local organic store stopped at her table. She bought a few soaps, tested them, and returned the next week with a proposal. "Young lady," she said, "your products deserve to be on our shelves." That was Tisa's first big break. Seeing her soaps displayed in a real store made her feel like she had finally stepped into the world Baba always believed she could reach. She sent him a picture with a small note. "We did it, Baba." The city that once scared her had become the place where she began to shine. For the first time Tisa saw her name, Tisa's Hands, printed on a store label. Proof that even the girl who was once abandoned could build something beautiful with her own strength. It was a quiet evening in Nairobi, when Tisa heard a knock at her apartment door. She had just finished packaging soaps for delivery when she opened it, and saw a man in a black suit holding an envelope. "Miss Tisa Aching?" he asked politely. She nodded. The man handed her the letter and said softly, "I'm sorry for your loss." Her heart dropped before she even opened it. The moment she saw Baba's name written in bold letters, her knees weakened. The letter said Baba Aching had passed away peacefully in his sleep. For a long moment, she couldn't breathe. The man continued, "He left you full ownership of his estate, including his land and property. It's valued at about $3.4 million. The words meant nothing to her. All she could think about was Baba's warm smile, his gentle voice, the man who had found her and given her life. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she sat on the floor, clutching the letter to her chest. The money didn't matter. The land didn't matter. What mattered was that her only family, the man who had loved her without reason, was gone. She whispered through her tears, "I told you I'd make you proud, Baba. But I wish you had stayed to see it." The next morning, she packed her bags and traveled back to the village. The roads felt longer than ever before. Every corner reminded her of memories, Baba teaching her to plant seeds, to believe in herself, to never let pain turn her bitter. When she reached the old farmhouse, it felt too quiet. The chair where he used to sit was empty. His walking stick still leaned against the wall. Tisa fell to her knees, the silence wrapping around her like cold air. The villagers welcomed her back warmly. They told her how proud Baba had been, how he showed everyone pictures of her products in stores, how he said, My girl is making the world smell beautiful." That made her cry even more. She stayed for days, organizing his burial, fulfilling every wish he had written in his will. But what Tisa didn't know was that her return, and the news of Baba's estate, had already spread beyond the village. Somewhere far away, two people who once left her behind heard about it too. To them, it wasn't a story of love or loss, it was an opportunity. While Tisa mourned the only man who ever truly loved her, the ones who gave her away were already planning their way back into her life, not with love, but with greed. The days after Baba's funeral were heavy and silent. Tisa spent most of her time in the garden he had planted, sitting beside the flowers he loved so much. Every visitor who came to offer condolences reminded her of what she had lost. But one afternoon, as the sun began to set, she heard a knock on the wooden gate. Two strangers stood outside, a man and a woman, both dressed neatly, holding a small folder in their hands. "Can we speak to Tisa Aching?" the man asked politely. Tisa stepped forward, wiping her hands on her skirt. "That's me," she said. The man's eyes softened. "My name is Lumo," he said slowly. "And this is my wife Kina. Where were your parents?" For a moment, Tisa didn't understand what she had heard. Her heart raced, and her body felt cold. She stared at their faces, their eyes, their smiles, and there was something familiar about them. But instead of warmth, she felt a strange emptiness. "My parents," she repeated quietly. The woman nodded eagerly, opening the folder and showing baby pictures, hospital documents, and birth papers. "We've been looking for you for years," Kina said, her voice trembling as if rehearsed. "We never stopped praying for this day." Tisa stood frozen. She didn't know whether to cry, shout, or walk away. Everything about them seemed too perfect, too timed. Why now? Why after Baba was gone? They spoke about how young and poor they were, how they had made a mistake, how they regretted leaving her. Lumo reached out to touch her hand, but she quietly stepped back. Her voice came out calm but firm. "Where were you when I was hungry? When I cried for a mother I never knew? Baba found me. He gave me everything. You didn't." The couple exchanged uneasy glances. Kina pretended to wipe tears, saying, "We thought you'd hate us. But now that you're grown, we want to be part of your life again." Tisa nodded slowly, but inside her mind was spinning. She remembered Baba's words. Some people only come close when the fruit is ripe. They stayed for a while, talking about the past, pretending to care. But their eyes wandered around the property, the land, the house, the car she had parked outside. Their smiles hid intentions she could already sense. When they finally left, Tisa sat quietly on the porch, staring at the old gate they had just walked through. Something in her heart told her this was not a reunion. It was a warning. The people who once left her behind had returned, not for love, but for what she had inherited from the man who truly raised her. Weeks passed after Lumo and Kina's visit, and Tisa tried to move on. She wanted to believe their sudden return was not about money. But one morning, a courier arrived at her gate with a thick brown envelope. When she opened it, her hands shook. It was a legal notice. Lumo and Kina were suing her. The letter said Baba Aching's will was invalid because she was not his legal granddaughter, and that as her biological parents, they had the right to inherit his entire estate. For a long time, she just stared at the paper, her heart breaking all over again. The people who once left her with nothing now wanted to take away the only thing her grandfather left behind. News spread quickly through the village. Some people whispered that maybe the couple deserved a share. Others said it was unfair. The small community that once stood by Baba became divided. Some neighbors who had once smiled at Tisa now avoided her gate, afraid to take sides. She felt betrayed and alone. Each night, she sat on the veranda, looking at Baba's rocking chair, and wondering what he would tell her if he were there. His words echoed in her heart. "When truth is on your side, you don't need to shout. Just stand firm." Tisa knew she had to fight, even though every part of her wanted peace. She gathered all Baba's documents, including the will and the land papers, and traveled to the city. That's where she met Deo, a young lawyer with calm eyes and a quiet confidence. He listened to her story without interrupting, then said, "They can claim blood, but you have love and law on your side. I'll help you." The case began soon after. It became the talk of both the village and the city. Reporters came, and people speculated about the fortune left behind. Lumo and Kina arrived in court wearing fine clothes, pretending to be heartbroken parents who had just found their long-lost daughter. Their lawyer argued that Baba Aching had no right to will his property to a child that wasn't legally his. But Tisa stood tall beside Deo. She didn't raise her voice or cry in public. Her pain was deep, but so was her strength. She had lost too much to let greed win now. Each time she looked at the couple, she didn't see parents. She saw strangers trying to erase the man who saved her life. The legal battle was long and exhausting. But Deo kept reassuring her. The truth will stand, Tisa. It always does. She nodded quietly, praying he was right. Deep inside, she wasn't fighting for the money. She was fighting for Baba's name. For the man who taught her that family isn't about who gives you life, but who helps you live it. The court case was moving slowly, and every day felt heavier than the last. Tisa spent hours with her lawyer, Deo, reviewing documents, trying to prove that Baba's will was valid. One afternoon, while going through Baba's old files in his wooden chest, Deo found a small envelope marked private. Inside were sealed documents and a flash drive labeled for my girl, Tisa. Tisa's hands trembled as she stared at it. Should we open it? She asked softly. Deo nodded, connecting it to his laptop. The video began with Baba sitting on the porch of their old house, wearing his usual smile and hat. His voice was calm but serious. If you are watching this, my girl, he said, then I am gone. Tears filled Tisa's eyes instantly. Baba looked straight into the camera, his eyes full of love. There's something you deserve to know before anyone else tells you their version of it. The people who left you didn't do it because they were poor. They sold you for money. They traded you for what they thought would make their life better. Tisa covered her mouth, shaking her head. Baba continued. I found you at the hospital gate because fate wanted you to have a second chance. You were wrapped in a towel, crying, and the nurse said the couple who left you disappeared after receiving money from someone. I didn't know who they were, but I knew you didn't deserve that kind of beginning. So I took you home. You became my granddaughter not by paper, but by love. Her tears fell freely now. The truth felt like a knife cutting through her heart. The people now calling themselves her parents had not just abandoned her, they had sold her like she was nothing. But Baba's voice in the video stayed steady. I kept this truth from you because I didn't want you to grow with hate. I wanted you to know peace. But if one day they return, remember this. You owe them nothing. You are who you became because you were loved, not because you were born. When the video ended, the room was silent. Deo placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. This changes everything, he said quietly. They also found sealed adoption papers in the same envelope, signed and stamped legally. Baba had officially adopted her years ago. She was his granddaughter in every way. That mattered before the law. Tisa sat quietly, tears running down her face, but her heart slowly filled with new strength. The pain was deep, but now she knew the whole truth. Her past was ugly, but Baba's love had turned it into something beautiful. She looked up and whispered, "Thank you, Baba. Now I know what I'm fighting for." The courtroom was packed, the air heavy with whispers and judgmental eyes. Tisa sat quietly beside her lawyer, Deo, her hands trembling under the table. Across the room, Lumo and Kina sat dressed in fake sorrow, their faces drawn in forced regret. When the judge called for order, Lumo stood first. He looked around dramatically, wiping invisible tears, and said, "We were young and desperate. We didn't know what we were doing. Please understand. We only wanted our daughter back." His words made a few villagers in the crowd nod with pity. For a moment, it almost worked. But Deo wasn't moved. He rose slowly, holding a small flash drive between his fingers. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "before you believe these words, please allow me to present Baba's final message." The lights dimmed, and all eyes turned to the screen. The video began to play. Baba, older but warm, appeared, sitting on his favorite wooden chair. His voice filled the courtroom, steady and full of truth. "Tisa, my girl," he said, "you deserve to know why I could never talk about your past. They didn't give you a way out of poverty. They sold you for money." The crowd gasped. Kina's face turned pale. Lumo's fake tears stopped instantly. Baba continued, "When I found you, you were sick and abandoned. I brought you home because fate gave me another chance to love." By the time the video ended, the silence in the room was deafening. Even the judge leaned back, visibly shaken. Lumo tried to interrupt, shouting, It's a lie. That man forged everything. But Deo quickly handed over the original adoption papers, sealed and signed by the state registrar years ago, with Baba listed as her legal guardian. The judge's face hardened. Enough, he said firmly. You sold this child, then came back years later to steal from her again. This court finds both of you guilty of fraud, perjury, and emotional abuse. His gavel hit the desk sharply. Lumo slumped back, his eyes empty. Kina buried her face in her hands, whispering excuses no one wanted to hear. Tisa stood slowly, tears rolling down her cheeks. But there was no joy, only the quiet ache of victory that came too late. She turned toward the empty seat where Baba once sat, her voice barely above a whisper. Baba, we won. But I'd give everything back just to see you once more. The room stayed silent as she walked out, her head held high. Outside the courthouse, the wind brushed against her face like Baba's unseen hand. The villagers who once doubted her now bowed their heads with respect. She didn't smile. She just whispered softly to the sky. You were right, Baba. Truth always wins, even when love has to carry it alone. After the court case ended, Tisa became the talk of the town. Reporters came to her home, begging for interviews. Some wanted to hear how she won. Others wanted her to expose the people who betrayed her. But Tisa said no to all of them. She didn't want fame or pity, she only wanted peace. The noise of attention didn't matter anymore. What mattered was honoring Baba's name, the man who gave her everything when she had nothing. A few months later, she used part of her inheritance to open a small building near the edge of the village. It wasn't fancy, just clean rooms with bright blue walls and a big sign that read, The Aching Foundation, a home of second chances. Children began arriving one by one, some orphans, some abandoned, some left behind by people who should have loved them. Tisa greeted each one with open arms, making sure they had what she once prayed for, food, a safe bed, and a chance to go to school. Every morning, she would walk through the hallways, smiling at the sound of laughter and tiny footsteps. The children called her Mama Tisa. It was a name that melted her heart each time she heard it. She told them stories about Baba Aching, how he used to fix her hair, how he taught her to read, how he said that love isn't about who gives birth to you, but who stands beside you when the world turns away. The foundation grew quickly. People from other towns came to visit, offering donations and support. Some who had once doubted her now praised her courage. But Tisa never let it go to her head. She always said, This isn't about me. It's about giving children what Baba gave me, hope. One afternoon, as she watched the kids eating under a mango tree, a woman approached her. It was the judge from her case. She smiled softly and said, You could have spent all this money on yourself, but you built something bigger. You've taught us all what family really means. That evening, Tisa stood outside the foundation, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with orange and gold, Baba's favorite colors. She whispered, I hope you're proud, Baba. I'm living your dream. For a moment, she felt a warmth in her chest, as if his spirit was near, smiling down at her. Soon, people across the region began calling her the girl who chose love over blood. Her story spread far beyond her village, a story not of revenge or riches, but of a girl who turned her pain into purpose. Tisa had lost everything once, but in giving love to others, she had found something greater, a true family built not by blood, but by heart. Years later, when the noise of her success had faded and life had become calm again, Tisa found herself standing on the same hill where Baba Aching was buried. The wind was gentle that morning, carrying the smell of fresh earth and wildflowers. In her hand, she held a single sunflower, Baba's favorite flower, the one he used to place by her bed every birthday. She knelt by his grave, brushing the dust off his name carved in stone and whispered, I did it, Baba. I kept my promise. Every child who feels lost now has a place to belong. Her voice trembled, not from sadness, but from gratitude. She traced her fingers over the word Aching and smiled through her tears. Around her, the laughter of children from the nearby foundation echoed faintly in the distance. The home she built had become more than she ever dreamed. It was filled with hope, laughter, and the same warmth Baba once gave her when she was just a scared little girl trying to find her place in the world. As she sat quietly, lost in thought, small footsteps approached behind her. A tiny hand touched her shoulder. She turned to see a young girl, no older than 7, with big brown eyes and a shy smile. It was one of the children from her foundation, Amina. The little girl looked at Tisa and asked softly, "Mama Tisa, can I stay with you tonight? I get lonely sometimes." Tisa felt her heart melt instantly. She wiped her tears and opened her arms, pulling the child close. "Of course, my child," she said gently. "You already have a home." The girl smiled, wrapping her arms tightly around her. They stood there for a moment, two souls connected not by blood, but by love and shared healing. As the sun began to set, Tisa held the little girl's hand, and together they walked down the dusty path away from the grave. The camera follows them from behind. The woman who once had no one now walking with a child who finally had someone to call family. The golden light stretched across the land, touching the fields Baba once farmed, the school he dreamed of, and the hearts he left behind. Tisa didn't look back. She didn't need to. She carried Baba with her. In every child's laughter, every meal shared, every life she touched. She was no longer the abandoned girl searching for love. She was the woman who became love itself. And as the screen faded, her voice echoed softly. Family isn't who you come from, it's who you choose to stand with when the world turns away. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll past. Drop a sunflower in the comments for Baba Aching, the man who proved that love, not blood, makes a family. Share this story so the world remembers. Every abandoned child deserves a second chance. Follow for more real stories that remind us kindness can rewrite destiny.